So now we're going to talk about the types, the different chunks and stuff that you can put in the kiln. Here I have jasper, and this stuff needs to get a little bit hotter than agate. Jasper tends to like around 550 degrees, and agate, like this stuff, tends to like around 450 degrees. And I also have petrified wood in here, this stuff. And this stuff likes around 400 degrees, usually. But the different variations of different kinds of stone also have temperatures that they like, and there's quite a few references on the internet that you can look up. Puget Sound Flint Knappers has a graph that they put up on their website, and it's a pretty detailed one. So you cannot put chunks like this inside your roaster, because for one, it'll blow up, and this is way too big. The thickest thing I would ever put in here is probably about 2 inches thick, and that's the maximum. This is a huge chunk of agate that someone gave to me, and this thing is just gorgeous. I'll show you some of the flakes I got from that. He also sent me this red, it's blood red jasper, but the lighting in here isn't really good, you can't see it, but this is some of my favorite stuff to work with, and if you heat treat it, it's really nice. So all of these are flakes, and they're relatively thin, stuff like that. But I also have chunks of agate, and these are fairly thick, but you can still put them in the roaster because they're just, this one isn't even 2 inches thick, and it's the biggest one, so I'll trust it in there. I'll just heat it up real slowly and let it dry out. And here I have this is in regular light, this would be peachy red, a hint of orange carnelian agate, and I got this from the same person, and I also love carnelian. That and red jasper are two favorite things to work with. So my temperature in here, I'm going to turn to about 425, because I have a couple pieces of jasper that are a little bit grainy, and they're going to have to get pretty hot, so I'll stick those in the hottest places. And even though it's getting really hot, I can still work with the petrified wood in there, and I'll put them more towards the center. So say this piece of jasper, it gets the hottest in that corner right there, so I'm going to stick it right down on the side. Just push it down in there. Alright, see that? Now, cover it up. And there it is. So there's one, and I have some more jasper, and I'll stick those kind of next to it. Make sure they're not touching inside, and you want them as close to the bottom as possible so the sand heat keeps all the heat in. And this corner is going to get to about 575 degrees. So I'll stick quite a few stones in there to absorb as much of the heat as possible, so the stones behind it don't get too hot. And if you just play around with it, you can learn to control your temperatures in here very well. It's just more of an intuitive thing than anything else. So I'm sticking all my grainy jasper that needs to get hotter, and all the right up next to the walls where it gets the hottest, and I'm completely covering them in sand. And behind those I would put the stuff that needs just a little less heat than what the jasper here is getting. So I have, well, that's all the jasper I have, so that side's taken care of. This side here gets a little less hot than that side does, and so I use this side for agate, and it works every time. So this flat piece here, this is thinner than most of the pieces, and the thinner the pieces are, usually the more heat they can take, and that ends in a more glassy product. So I'm not going to put these right up next to the wall. I'm going to leave about an inch, and that's just for safety. Get it all the way down to the bottom, cover it in sand. There you go. Get the next one. And these are both flakes I got from that big chunk of agate here. And in normal light, this is milky white with a hint of kind of brownish gray, and then a little bit of clear. A lot of the artifacts I've found are made out of milky white agate. And I've looked and looked and looked for a local source of that stuff, never have. It's always been elusive. So I'm sticking all my thinner pieces of agate in first. Alright. And so right behind that, I would start putting slightly thicker pieces and thicker pieces and thicker pieces, because you want all your thicker pieces in the center. Because if you heat those up too much, then they crack and explode, and it's bad. Don't do it. So this is slightly thicker. I'm going to put this in behind that last row. Make sure they're not touching. This is a fairly thick little chunk of agate that I just found in a creek. You can heat just normal chunks that you find in the creek. You don't have to reduce them, nothing like that, because they nap just fine in this state after you treat them. I generally like to heat treat agates in their original cobble state. So if there are any cracks in the stone, they usually break along them, and you don't have to guess and open them up like a thunder egg. And I haven't ever really lost a lot of pieces doing it the way I do it. So it's just the way I stick to. And every roaster's different. So that's why you want to take the temperatures and have a really detailed graph that shows you what places are getting what temperature. Along this back here too is also a really good spot to put agates, but I'm going to put the Maya grainier agates along here. Like this. This is really grainy. You can see all that in there. Stick that right there. Kind of up next to the wall a little more than I did over here. Thin piece of carnelian. No, that's the brown stuff that came off the big cobble. And I'll just stick this piece of carnelian somewhere so I can show you where you would put a chunk like this. So you have to put, in this roaster, the chunks have to go in a corner somewhere. And so I put those as deep as I can, without touching any other stones, in the corner, about 2 inches away from the corner, and that generally works really well. except this is carnelian, so that can't go there, because carnelian needs to get around 575 degrees, which is a little more than most agate. But this stuff would probably be about 550 because it's not very dark. So I'll stick that in this corner without touching any other rocks. That's important. You can start cracks. I don't know how it happens in there, but it usually does. It cracks on you where it's touching another stone. And then I have another chunk here. Fairly good quality inside. And I absolutely love cobbles of agate. They're fun to work with. Kind of hard to get inside at first, but once you get a series of flakes going, you can alternate bevel them and they turn into a pretty good preform. So I'm going to finish filling this up because this video is running pretty long. Alright, so I covered everything in a generous amount of sand and I compacted it so everything is nice and solid inside. And the sand acts as a heat conductor, and it evenly distributes the heat among the inside of the oven. And that's why you use sand. You don't want to just throw your stones in there. So we're gonna put the lid on this. Oh, and I forgot two little pieces here. I'll stick that one right there. This one, same place. Cover those back up. Alright, so now you put your lid on it. You want to make sure that your roaster has a metal lid, not a glass one. Alright, and so you don't want to go straight to the temperature, the maximum temperature. You want to raise the temperature extremely cautiously. But before you do that, I'm going to turn this to about 225 degrees, and I'm going to leave that for 3 hours. And that is going to dry out the sand, and it's going to dry out the stones so there's no moisture left. And after 3 hours is up, I'm going to start raising the temperature 50 degrees every hour. So that's 25 degrees every 30 minutes. And this thing is going to get to 425 degrees inside. So that's this little dot right here. I might just go in between the two, like 415.